Hello, welcome to another awesome episode of Everything They Don't Want You to Know. I am very excited to get into one of my favorite laws that they frankly do not want you to know, which is the law of polarity. I have my own list of universal laws, which are usually 12, but I kind of intermix them with the principles of Hermeticism, one of which is mentalism. And, I think it kind of basically pushes the law of attraction back to a number 13, which you usually see um, in the lists. Because, the principle of mentalism that all is mind is really, the key to everything. And the more you can believe that and understand that and get your mind in alignment with what you want and not what you see around you and what you're being asked to do and think and whatever else, the quicker your reality will change. And there's lots of great teachers who teach lots of great things like that. Abraham Hicks is a really wonderful person if you ever want to get into the laws of attraction. Eventually, I will hit the law of attraction with episode 13 or whatever. This is me slowly opening up the books. And, in previous times that I did this, I did a very long kind of series of lectures during COVID at a spiritual shop near me in Patchogue. And you can catch them on the Blacklight District Studios YouTube channel. It's like me longer with graphs and different things. And I go through all the universal laws immediately right off the bat, but I've chosen this time around to just kind of go one at a time. And, we'll hit on other ones and be talking about things, but, at length today we're going to discuss polarity and why they don't want you to know about the law of polarity. On episode number 1, we learned about the oneness and the nothing that started it all. And on episode 2, we learned from Hermeticism, the Hermetic principle of mentalism, about how all is mind, all is a giant mind. Well, those two things create what is ultimately the fundamental nature of reality, beyond the fact that every single thing is just one thing and every single thing is a mental construct. And that is that everything is living in a polarity, a swinging sort of universe of possibility. We live in a multiverse of possibility and all sorts of things. And this comes from the nothing and the creative force of the universe. As we talked about on the other episode, what came first, the chicken or the egg? The idea for both. Idea comes before form. And when this nothing gave birth to this something, which was just basically an idea of something, and it began to move around intellectually in a non-reality, for what you think of as reality, in a mental plane, and essentially think of and create every single thing that could possibly be in existence. But within any bit of that at all, still there is a gap in between every piece of creation that you could almost call time, but isn't exactly the same thing, of all these things sort of being stacked on each other. And it's sort of a breath of sort of creation and rest and creation and rest and creation and rest. And this goes on everywhere, from the tides to your heartbeat. There is an in-between between everything, in between every molecule. We talked about the empty space that's all around you. We live in a polarized reality that is swinging, ebbing and flowing. A sun will rise and fall, and, galaxies around it will as well, as something goes supernova or whatever it may be. There is spring when the flowers and the vegetables come in or whatever. Granted, sometimes it's not in spring, but where the crop comes in, and then there's the time when the seeds are growing underground and blah, blah, blah. There are cycles to everything, and it's an ebb and it's a flow. And ultimately, the journey for all things is a journey to balance because you are one thing, which is both the creative mind and the nothing. You're the stillness, the appreciator of the moment of the thing, and you're the idea that might be even better. What about this? What about this? What about this? There's a lot of ways to interpret, these energies and what they ultimately mean, in terms of like which one's masculine, which one's feminine. We spoke a little bit how, one of the laws is the law of gender, and we're going to get to that in another episode, which is another thing they don't want you to know because it just explains and helps people to understand better their sexual nature, and both like as like their sexual nature, like who they're into, and just like their nature sexually, emotionally, as a gender, male, female, whatever it might be, because of the nature of what we've talked about on other episodes as well of reincarnation and us cycling back. So even that is a ebb and a flow, as we are male and we're female and we're animal and we're vegetable and we're ebbing and we're flowing all the time. Now, they don't want you to know this because they're using it against us. There's a natural ebb and flow of society. Society is slowly, essentially funneling itself towards a balance. There are people that seem to you like they're on one side and you might be on another side. Or if you're really, I don't want to say you're enlightened like me, but if you're really getting there, you're probably somewhere in the middle going, well, I understand both sides and I love both sides and I don't want to, erase any of them from existence. How do we meet in the middle? And that's where ultimately we want to be heading. But our entire bit of society, the media especially, but I mean, things have been like this for forever, is designed to excite the part of us that is polarized, bring out the aspects of us that are different and polarize them. Pit black against white, pit male against female. You don't even necessarily have to have a particularly polarized view of men or female. Like I never had a particularly polarized view of male and female. It's kind of become polarized the same way it's become polarized for other people because I see so much evidence of the polarity. But ultimately, the evidence of the polarity that we see is just what's being thrust into our faces. So, we don't have to buy into that. You should always remember that there are more people in the center than there are noisy people on the left or on the right. The noisy voices on the left and the right are propped up by the financial interests because it keeps us squabbling. If you basically have like the maddest person in the room on the left and the maddest person in the room on the right doing your negotiations, it's a complete recipe for disaster. A sane universe would have the sanest voice on the left and the sanest voice on the right. The Speaker of the House wouldn't be antagonizing the people who are ultimately their constituents. This is just sort of crazy. I mean, really, like it's just... When I was a kid, I always thought that there was guys with pointy hats and long beards and, pipes going, let us think about this long and hard for the people, And to grow up and understand what I understand, because I've read so many freaking books, is just that there is a system of corruption like you would not even believe. And I've talked about it a little bit in the introduction to the show, and you really just can't begin to understand, especially because the majority of us come from such an innocent place. The few of us who come from that evil place tend to hide it pretty good. But most of us are just sort of like innocently like, well, surely responsible people are taking care of things. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And the polarized nature of reality is being amplified to a negative degree. Men and women, and it doesn't always have to be men and women, but men and women, just as a generality, offer each other, or you could even say two people offer each other
a balance in each other's energy. Granted, that's not always what you get. That's not always the type of relationships that you get. Sometimes you get relationships that are amplifications of your energy. Sometimes you get relationships that are partial amplifications of your energy. There's all sorts of arrangements in which relationships can be complementary or detrimental or whatever it is. But there is a joining of two energies. I've talked about before on other shows that, like, if I don't like to talk about it really, because I just think it's like none of anybody's business. But for the sake of understanding, I am what some people might call, and I don't like this terminology, but like non-binary, and that means basically I never really identified as a guy. I like learned to be a guy, and like because that's what I was, but I didn't necessarily like feel drawn to that in a lot of ways. Even though a lot of my hobbies were, kind of masculine hobbies or whatever. But to a certain degree, I always kind of felt like I was masquerading a little bit. Um, and because of my high amount of feminine energy, everybody has a little bit of both, and different measure for different people. I have a high amount of feminine energy for a guy. Um, you know, I was, balancing myself the other way. Um, and I look for, and have always looked for women who are kind of masculine. And not like I like women, like I present masculine and I am kind of by nature kind of feminine. And I like women who present feminine but by nature are a little bit tough. I like tough women. My mom's really tough, so I like women who could take care of themselves, kind of thing. Um, and this is my polarity. I'm trying to balance myself out with energy, the type of nurturing energy that I would like. And granted, this happens in gay relationships, any sort of relationship. Generally, even in friendships and stuff. You're getting people who are your balance or your complete validation or partial validation and some balance. There's all different configurations that friends and whatever will come in, but it's usually relatively significant like that. It's pointed in a direction or another. It's not insignificant, it's significant. Now, this polarity between men and women, that you see going on in society right now, where there's like a real like push of like the divide. And granted, there's total culture clash as culture changes. One of the things that's going on right now in the sphere with men and women is women are more naturally prone to psychicism. Like when I go to like some crazy spiritual thing or whatever, I can count the men that are there on one hand, and the rest of them are women. And it's not, for whatever reason, coming as well. Women are creators. They make babies. There's a whole bunch of reasons why women are a little bit more open to this in our vessels, and this is why we need to switch into the matriarchy sort of thing. But that doesn't leave out all the men. There's plenty of men who have a soft nature like myself that are should be welcomed into this this future, and taking care of things. And actually, feminine natured men are really good for the task because we get the best of both worlds. And it's a very nuanced subject about this, what is gender, and like this idea of breaking things down into millions of different pronouns and stuff. I find so silly. It's wonderful to have us all be they them. I think that's a great idea. But to go beyond that to this idea of no, instead of that, we'll all have individual pronouns. That's like ridiculous. It's so ridiculous on so many levels because your individual pronoun is your name. Mine's Jesse. Like it's like so fucking stupid. Um, you know, and it's such like a kind of like a showy, forced whatever. Like I will make you call me this. Like the world doesn't need that. The world needs more easygoing, lovable, loving people trying to do more for each other. And this notion that things are as far apart with men and women as they are is really just a playing out of a cultural revolution of spirituality that is starting to come more naturally to these women. That is changing in the culture, and there are men like me there as well, but there's not as many men. So there's a lot of men feeling a little bit left behind by that. In general, there is so many men who are just really lonely in this world. there's a lot of kind of disturbing numbers that have come out from various different dating apps about how few men, and I mean it's like 75% of men or something like that, and possibly more, aren't really in the dating pool. They're just kind of hung out to dry, and the women are sort of fighting over this like coveted group of, let's say, 25%, if that, that are getting all the dates. And that group of men ultimately, who has so many options because of the way they're being sought after or whatever, is breaking the hearts of all of the women essentially. And there's a lot of men out there who are wonderful and cool and aren't really getting the time of day. And um, what's an isolated man who's not having psychic episodes and whatever else and isn't particularly sensitive to think or do? A lot of the reactions of your average guy is pretty understandable. And it's understandable for them to not really understand a lot of the spiritual mumbo jumbo that gets said by these women who aren't spiritual teachers. So much of this shit is completely bonkers to fucking explain to people. And I mean, I've gotten, I think, pretty good at bringing it down to a language that most people can understand. But it is, it's a lot of double talk and duality. And, there's so many bits of this reality that are interesting and challenging because it is this mind, it is this hologram, it is you interacting with yourself in a calculated, dance with a higher part of you that knows everything, and has set everything up. Everything's a mind. And this is the other side of the mind where we've created a physical thing, like we talked about last episode. And it's all just one thing. We're just one piece of the prism that ultimately, if you put it all back together like Humpty Dumpty, would be God. And God isn't some dude in a fucking, cape or whatever, cloak and a beard. It's the cosmic fishbowl that we live in that contains all the information. And perhaps God can come down and be embodied in a body. But I suspect they would have to deal with all the same shit that we have to deal with here. The veil of forgetting and things that we'll eventually get into in other episodes of the show. But polarity is real. Women, great that they're more connected to the psychic thing, the spiritual thing. You kind of can't demonize the men for not being so. And it's like, this is the men have the strength, which a lot of the women don't necessarily want to give the credit for. But I mean, it's bone density and muscle fibers and all this different things. And there's a reason, because the women ultimately had to give up some of those things for the miracle of being able to birth a baby. So there's like adjustments to the lady that basically she gave up for the great gifts. And there's psychic gifts and spiritual gifts and energetic gifts that the women have because of this. And it's really amazing. I mean, it's really like to be like sort of jealous of the ladies. But it's really actually, I think, a challenge for men because we can sort of we can learn a lot from them, and we can sort of be better women than they can be a little bit because they have to actually go through so many of these processes of birthing things and hormonal things and whatever else, and actually the empathy and emotional understanding of the feminine energy measured with the strength and honor, an honorable strength, of that, the father, the doting, honorable strength of a father, if you can imagine that, the masculine. And also divine masculine representation is like humor, to be able to sort of like diffuse any bit of like the darkness and turn it all into light. Sorry, I hit my microphone. So, that masculine, balanced and tempered, learned from the feminine can be really incredible, but it's very difficult for most men to even, get there right now. Right now, there's so many women opening up, and the amount of men is small. So a lot of the divide that you see on these shows is that it's that little 25% or 20% of these men who are getting all the dates, misbehaving, generally making, the smaller group of the 75%. And that doesn't mean that everybody in that small 25% is misbehaving. There are plenty of nice people, everywhere. But there's definitely a bit of, I don't want to say aiming too high. What I ultimately actually think it is with men and women is an inability to authentically love somebody who you personally find very attractive. I think that there are people on planet Earth who you can ostensibly know, like, I don't know if everybody would find this person attractive, but oh my God, I find them attractive. I am so attracted to them. And that's okay. People have to feel safe with that. I think a lot of people don't. I think a lot of people look to their buddies. I know this is very true with men, and I think it's very true for women as well. The men and the women that they're with become kind of status symbols for them in their life of like how good they are or aren't good. And if they feel like they have somebody who other people aren't attractive to, like they don't want them. And so often, like, I mean, just like I say this because like there's so many men who basically aren't getting the swiped right or whatever because like, they're not traditionally attractive or whatever else. Like, and I know that there's people who I know weren't traditionally attractive, but I was so attracted to them for whatever reason. And, sometimes I gave myself over to letting myself find them attractive the way I did. And other times I like, was peer pressured not to go on a date with them or not to get their phone number or whatever it was, just throughout my life. And I really think that that's part of like the thing because I think everybody has somebody. There are people out there for everybody, and there's a lot of different things that are getting in the way with some of these relationships. But I think weird, superficial, attractive things and things about money. Women who have like the 6'6", they need 6 foot and 6 figures and all this stuff. There are some really talented and amazing people out there who just need somebody to believe in them, and you think they're going to be like loyal to somebody like you or whatever all these years down the line, like you know now you're interested in them because now they make 6 figures. It's like, I've been a success in lots of ways, but like I've never been as big a success as I've sort of set out to be, and as big a success as I know I will one day be, and I kind of always have counted myself lucky, that I found like my people before even my ex-wife, like before I became like such a success that I couldn't tell who was cool, and I would have people coming out of the woodwork to like want to be with me because now I represented, this thing that I didn't represent before or whatever it might be. And it's such a superficial world that we live in, and that's definitely a big thing getting in the way. But I think the spiritual aspect of it, with women trying to better themselves and lots of spiritual beliefs that they don't quite understand, is making it really easy to make it seem like the split is just so massive and so. But the men are softer and are kinder, and as tough as many of these men talk, most of them talk as tough as they talk because they know that a lot of the women want that. I did an episode of my show this week, Coolest Geek Alive, which is every Wednesday and every Sunday. I'm sorry, every Wednesday and every Saturday with a Sunday night live stream, Coolest Geeks a live stream episode that we do at like 11 Pacific time and 9 or 8 Eastern time. Anyway, the Coolest Geek Alive show, I was talking about just what do women really want. What do women really want? Most of them want masculine men. I want masculine women, hot masculine women, basically. But I don't want to see that in a movie every fucking time. Like, I don't need to see that. I can relate to anybody, but like different people, different strokes, different stuff that we are looking for. But as a whole, the larger part of the percentage of the population, they aren't necessarily like us. A lot of you guys are probably a little bit like me, where you're a little bit different. A lot of them are very similar, and they're just men and women, and they like men. And, that's why they do go for the bad boys and the person who seems like he has it all together, even though he's fucking falling apart, and makes fun of them and blah, 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 blah. There's all these different things that are going on. But recent times, I feel like they've very successfully taken all these single women and all these single men and weaponized them against each other. And long before that, we've been getting weaponized against blacks and Hispanics. These are the illegal immigrants, and these are the the slaves, and and just there's so many different things. I mean, I don't have to fucking talk about it at great length. I think you understand the polarity that has been set up between this side and that side. Even the Nazis and the Jews, and these are all polarities. This idea of white supremacy and black supremacy, religious supremacy. They don't want you to be able to look at these situations and go, okay, this is the polarization of great pain of the black people, this black supremacy. Okay, this is great. This is a polarization of the perceived persecution of the Catholic people. The guy who's Bible thumping, teaching you about the dinosaurs used to live with man, and and other things. And he could be right. There's a lot of holes in the story of so many different things. And, and I say things like that just flatly, and used to hesitate to kind of talk and say something flippantly like that. But I mean, I know what I know. And I've been looking at this stuff for a very long time. And what we know is fucking stupid. That's the clearest thing. The clearest thing is we don't know shit. We are so fucking easy to manipulate. It's just insane. And part of it is because of this polarity. Where, look over there, look over there, look over there. Polarity, hysteria. Anger builds up. They fake us out with Pearl Harbor, and we get all excited and upset. And now we're in the war because they use the swinging emotions that we have. When you see somebody with bipolar, they're just having access to a lot more energy, and they can love more and feel more joy and be more up, but then they can be more down. And what they're demonstrating is just a pronounced version of what most people are generally holding back. You hear from men all the time when they talk about, Dax Shepard was just talking about on a podcast with Theo Vaughn about how he stopped drinking and now he cries all the time because he can't hold it back. He's just like an open wound, and he has to cry a lot. And that too is the ebb and flow. You can't hold in everything. It's a back and forth and back and forth. It's getting upset, having extreme feelings, and not locking into those extreme feelings, but moving back into the center. We can't be led by the craziest people on the left who want to lock up all of the people who they think are crazy on the right, because it's such a slippery slope with all this stuff. It's why they talk about communism. Communism's a great idea, but it doesn't work because the people in power never actually give up power, and then once they get in power, they start actually executing them having control. And this is the really unfortunate thing. And it does tend to be the case in general. Organized groups, they put out dogma. I'm a religious person in a lot of regards, but I'm not belonging to any religion. There are many religions that I relate to and I can conversate with about things that we both believe and share and whatever else. But, I choose not to have any particular religion because I believe that is a switching into a polarized position. And I believe that we're meant to be balanced and respectful to all religions, respectful to all people. We're all one. So anything that anybody believes, from like the craziest on thing down, ultimately I'm supposed to respect. God is the one that knows everything, or the cosmic fishbowl is the one that knows everything. I don't know everything. So I just have to sit there and go, okay, what part of this situation can I control? And, in the case of this polarity, in the case of your family, in the case of the Democrats and the Republicans, whatever, well, you can pull yourself out of the fight. Lots of you have been smart enough to go, I'm not going to be drafted. I'm not going into the military. I'm not going to beat people up for a living. I don't believe in violence. All right. But a lot of you guys who think that, you guys are still being violent online with your words, the way that you're going after things. And, and I'm guilty of this sometimes as well. I do believe that there's sort of a time and place to properly stick up for yourself, and you shouldn't just be like a meek person. But there's a lot of ways in which people are going after each other. Very nasty, very vicious. Lots of hyperbolic things. Calling somebody Hitler. Like people like to call Donald Trump Hitler. It's not helpful. I was one of the early people to very outwardly, like in like celebrity circles or whatever, to very quickly denounce Donald Trump. I'm less against him than I was, because I recognize that there's a lot of people who, as far as they're concerned, he represents some hope and a change in the system. And he does actually represent to me a certain change in the system. And we'll see what happens there. I do prefer him, who seems autonomous, to somebody like Biden, who's a person who's very much in the system and dogmatically doing what the Democratic Party wants him to do. And the Democratic Party is run by financial interests. And the financial interests are literally destroying our planet, dividing us all up, using sacred knowledge and information like this that I'm teaching you, like the law of polarity, to keep us divided. And this goes back to fucking Rome. Give them cake and circuses is a quote related to Roman times. You want to know why they had the Colosseum? To keep people happy, keep them distracted. That's also what football is. And what happens with football? Your team wins and you lose. You win some, you lose some. Did it. I mean, it's just, everything is just fucking polarity, baby. And there's a really great quote that says, millionaires don't do their astrology. Billionaires do. And there's a lot of truth to that, because the billionaires are the ones who are members of these secret societies and understands that there are flows and cycles to the universe. There's sort of like the same way that you could see a chart for all of the different water cycles that are going to take place with the ocean. It's going to come up to here, it's going to come up to there, it's going to go down there, it's going to come up here, blah, 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 around this date, around that date. You can see the same thing for yourself. If you can get, and granted, there's a lot of trickery and things that have gone into this subject, because like all subjects, the number 13 is God's number, and they've obscured it, made it an unlucky number, because that's the fucking level of fucking stupid control that is going on planet Earth, that they've been able to publicize that that's a bad number. And different things like that. So, I mean, like, you got to like keep in mind here what we're talking about. And there has been some trickery put into the astrological cycles. There is a 13th sign that's supposed to be added in there. And, so often I have my doubts about some of the systems of astrology, but then time and again, I will have some incredible reading or somebody do the work and get information about myself and about my journey and about where I am in the journey. I had a little stupid app that I had put just like a basic of my birthday and whatnot information into. And every time I would open up this fucking app, it was on the money about where I was emotionally, about like what was going on in my life. And if we know when we're going to be in an energetic downturn and it's time to eat ice cream and play video games and watch movies and like chillax because like getting anything done is going to be really difficult right now, and that's true because we understand that everything is fucking energy, mental energy, everything is just this one fucking loving energy, that we're going to be able to get into a flow with our own personal life cycle and be unique to us and living in harmony with the way we flow and our energy personally flows. Wouldn't that be nice? When you go to school, it's one size fits all. But it's not really, not everybody learns the same. And not everybody functions the same in terms of their work week and their energy cycles and, when they're happy and when they're sad and when they are excited about doing things. And when everybody has a different makeup genetically and emotionally, and just like there's so much that goes into all of our existences, and they are all very unique. I've come to understand that God is not repeating itself. Like the computer essentially that it is. It's testing out all sorts of things, but it's not doing anything like uselessly again when it doesn't have to. It'll make as many cows as we want to make, but it's not making as many Jessies as we want. Well, there's all the multiverse of the Jessies, so we're testing out the multiverse, within a thing. But each person outside of the Jessie is fucking unique to themselves and important. That important that they act as themselves. Important that they behave as themselves and interact with the others behaving as themselves, because that's when we learn the most and we get the most growth from interacting with one another, because we kind of screwed everything up interacting with one another. So the only way we can fix things is interacting with one another and getting it right. There's a back and forth, a polarity that goes on all the time as we live and we die, and we go to the other side and we take an accounting of all the things, connected to the source of all information. We see what's going on. We're like, okay, that's what we did. How do I come back and get some of those things right? How do I continue to grow? How do I continue to grow my consciousness so that it can grow beyond this reality onto another reality and onto another reality? That's the game. The game is growing your consciousness. And ultimately, growing your consciousness seems to amount to a lot of reconnecting with different aspects of yourself that you come to realize how much you love, and sort of reforming. The Big Bang, everything spreads apart, and then ultimately everything reforms back together again into another thing. And I can't profess to know everything about how this thing works. I don't think anybody does, but I do know the basics, and the basics are: you are a polarized being, and you are prone to polarity. Especially like when you hold things back and then all of a sudden it comes out. You need to understand this about yourself in order to fight against the propaganda that is fed to you all the time by the media, that you have to hate or be worried about the people on the other side of the political spectrum. People on the other side of the political spectrum are just you. But you and their minds can be polarized and made to think all sorts of things about civil war and terrible. Don't do it. Don't play into that system. Don't play that game. Really don't even engage. There's no need to, that stuff's not happening. And you just have to make peace with the reality that people are going to fight, and some amount of people are going to try to do the things that they're going to try to do, but you don't want to feed it. Do you remember many years ago, there was this huge group of people who meditated all at once, and there was this reduction in the crime rate and all this other stuff that happened due to the group meditation, which they were looking for and they were trying to do. It was like an experiment. Just think about what you could do by de-amplifying the negative energy in the culture war, in the political war, in the international war. What would happen if you took all of your venom and your anger and your hate and your frustration out of the game? It would be starved for oxygen. It would go away. It would disappear. There wouldn't be enough energy to propel it forward. You know that thing when the bully approaches you and you're like, why are you wearing that hat? Oh, I don't know. I thought maybe it's cool. What, you thought maybe it was cool? Like, and you keep getting bullied because they can sense that you're ready to be bullied. There's a similar thing with like sensing that somebody's ready to fight. Like, I'm looking for a fight and somebody's ready to fight. And a lot of people are ready to fight. And they think it's relatively harmless because it's like, oh, it's the internet, blah, blah, blah. But the internet is just an incubator for your energy. And if you don't have good outlets for that energy to get rid of all that frustration that you go out when you go get into stupid fights on the internet, what's going to happen? The polarity will eventually bubble over. And that's what they want. The hope is, and if you're not paying attention, and you really need to look beneath the surface, but, all of these riots and January the 6th, all these things, they are being helped. They're being helped on both sides to make both sides look freaking terrible and just get reactions from the other sides. This is just a pot that rich and powerful people are stirring because they have more money than anybody. A tiny, tiny portion of the planet has so much money you don't understand. My father is a rock star. I have perspective on what it means to be a rock star or be a movie star or whatever it might be. You're not rich. You've got some money. But the people that are rich, oh my God, they just dwarf the other people. They dwarf us. They can just do anything. They can accomplish anything. They need to sue us. They need to hire private investigators. They need to get our phones tapped, whatever it might be. Bribe a judge, bribe a police officer. They have the money to change people's lives. Any cops, even judges. I mean, just like these people aren't all... We live in a system designed to starve people for money so that they're desperate and they can always be bought and always be bribed. So many things. Our language is a great polarity. We drive in the parkway and we park on the driveway, and there's like a million other examples of things like that you could point to that are literally backwards. We don't overstand, we understand. I understand? I stand underneath that information? Why would it be understand? Like, that doesn't make any sense, just like on the roots of the words and stuff. If you get into the phonetic, understanding of, Latin roots and different things of language, there's all sorts of interesting things to learn about English in particular. English is a pretty nefarious language. I'm an English major. I've spent my whole life studying it, and it clearly has been designed to fuck with us, to polarize us in different ways, keep us in the past and the future through past tense, future tense. It's actually hard to say things in like the now present tense. It's always like, I did this thing, or, you're not doing the thing actively. You're doing an interview about how you did the thing. So often we end up saying stuff and we're casting all these spells, putting things in past tense, or talking about things in future tense. If you're promoting things or talking about what you're going to do, just ends up putting you in the past and the future. And there are languages that have no past or present tense. It's always just active. You're actively doing a thing. Or I guess not doing a thing. But you don't say anything. You don't have to say it if you're not doing it. There's also lots of languages that don't have mine. That's yours. That's mine. I, me. We had to teach different Native American tribes those words in order to basically hornswoggle them out of their land in America at various points in time, because they didn't have those words in the language. I've said before that I like the idea of they, them, because it helps to get rid of some of that stuff. It brings us together. It reinforces the idea that we're one. But then having like 1,000 different pronouns, that doesn't support the idea that we're one, and that just like complicates everybody's life and so many things. So many things. But these are polarities, the past and the future, and yours and mine. That belongs to me. This belongs to you. Like, you kind of see, like, if it all is ours, immediately it like eliminates a polarity. If it's all now, it immediately eliminates a polarity. And they like to say, and I think it's pretty true and pretty simple to boil down, that like anxiety has to do with the future and depression has to do with the past. And this is a polarity. These are all polarities. The temperature is hot and cold. It's a polarity. It's not one thing. It's two things. But really it's one thing. It's the temperature. And you know what the temperature is. The temperature could be cold. Temperature could be medium. Could be hot. But also that temperature is based on your perspective. And some people are like, yeah, this is no big deal. So like their middle equilibrium for temperature is like one thing and your middle equilibrium is another thing. They have a different polarity than you. So like if we're talking about temperature and we go to the person who like wants it to be the coldest and we go to the person who wants it to be the hottest, and like there's a middle grade temperature that like they can both tolerate that'll still keep them happy and everybody else in the middle. But instead we're like arguing with these two people and they both want to kill each other. I mean, it's really like really simple, perfect metaphor for all the things. At the end of the day, we need to listen to the people in the center because we would be polarized fools to continue to listen to the crazy people to the furthest side. We have to recognize that the journey that we need to make isn't to being more extreme in the positions we take, but being less extreme in every position we take. Being more forgiving and more loving and more understanding and more empathetic. So we can't be supporting candidates who are like, they're even crazier than I am about this thing. I love their passion. No, we need the passionate people in the middle who are like, listen, I'm not a Republican, but I understand why Donald Trump is appealing to everybody. And, we need to be cognizant of the requests being made by a huge demographic of people and meet them some of the way. And then we need a Republican to go, hey, listen, I know why Donald Trump is appealing to everybody. At the same time, there's a pathway forward that doesn't inflame everybody. And I think that we can all get on the same page about these military industrial complex and so many different bits of money disappearing and financial things. And there's so many things that we can agree on. Let's try and be more friendly to the other side of things and less about the fighting and get things together. Then what happens? Oh, wait, there's no distracting fighting. Then it comes down to, well, which two of these people are better at doing that? Are better at moving us forward nicely? And do maybe they come together in the end and they actually have such good interaction that they go, okay, and this person will be my vice president? Or they pick somebody that's like approved in there, or they have person in there in a position of leadership in some way or another. There are so many ways forward. And ultimately, there's only one way back. And it's anger and aggression and war. And it's just, we've done it so many times. We're now coming to understand that on this planet, there's tons of evidence of nuclear war. Previous nuclear conflicts that have been erased from history. In so many bits of, whether it's channeled material and other things of alien contacts and whatever else, it's come to be understood pretty good that Mars is a planet that its atmosphere was destroyed. It's the red planet because they blew themselves up. They blew up the planet with a civil war. And that the asteroid belt was a planet called Maldek, which got exploded first in a war between Mars and Maldek. And Maldek ended up blowing itself up, essentially, with some big weapon that it had created. And then all of those souls went and reincarnated over on Mars, and they had a massive civil war after a bunch of generations. And that civil war blew up the surface of the planet. And then most of those souls had to come and reincarnate here on planet Earth, where we're still working out lots of war karma. And we're not getting it. And it's time we get it. We need to get this. We are polarized beings. We are prone to a polarity. We want to have relationships with people who balance us. We want to have female or male relationship, our romantic relationship that's in our lives be one that balances us. My mom used to say, and I mean, there's lots of different ways for people to say this, but a good spouse or a good girlfriend, relationship, whatever, was someone who made you want to be a better person. And that's one way of looking at it. Somebody who you see things in them that you like and you like for yourself. You'd like to claim those things for yourself. Good friendships are like this, even passing friendships. Sometimes you meet somebody and you just sort of resonate with some bit of their energy that you love and you want to reclaim that part of you. And ultimately, it's because you are all things. You're the whole thing. So when you meet the other person, it's like a distant echo of something you used to be in some other part of existence. But on this side of things, you're this specific person, the specific body with the specific values that you've picked up from your specific family and neighborhood and country of origin and all these different things. But ultimately, everybody is just a reflection of you, of something you are or something you once were and could be again. And we go around gravitating towards the pieces of that puzzle that are the most important to us. And that's absolutely what we should be doing, of course. But we need to recognize that, I'm crazy in one way or another. And, eventually you're going to get to a point where you're less and less crazy, going on this journey and getting yourself more balanced. And some people are more balanced than others. But there's always things to learn from your reflection, from the people around you. Just everybody's a teacher. Even, the biggest idiot can teach you so much. So, just try to be open and in the moment and cognizant that, your momentary anger or whatever else, it is a flare-up of that polarity that is making everything in our reality spin. All the nucleuses with the electrons flowing around them and all that shit. It's everything is spinning, from this back and forth. Right? It's going that way and it's coming back, that way and back, that way and back, that way and back. It's swinging. And essentially, it's the dance that the nothing has been doing with the fucking creative force of the universe since it came to life. Since the creative force came to life, there's this fundamental polarity, this back and forth between the nothing and the everything that are eternally dancing together, because the nothing exists in all the things. Every moment we take a break, every statue we put up, and there's the statue for a certain amount of time or whatever. It doesn't even matter the time. Time's just an idea, but it's just the thing. Once it's created and it's there and it exists in the stack of all the things that have been created, there's a little gap between its creation and before its creation. And I mean, there's lots of gaps on the way to it in physically creating something, but it's really about the idea of the thing. To see the thing, the idea for the thing is there. There's all these ideas for the thing, but it snaps back and forth between creation and rest. Appreciation. Creation, appreciation. Creation, appreciation. So I don't know what else I want to tell you about polarity. I think you can see that, it's like one of these things of pulling your head out of your ass. You've heard about cut your nose to spite your face. It's like, it's one of those things. It's like, oh, fuck, I'm a polarized being. I'm easily sort of led in various polarities. I can get sucked up by the extreme over here and the extreme over there. But as a wise person, I want to consciously direct myself towards the middle, the lessening of the tension on either side, towards the path of least resistance and least anger and least violence and most forgiveness and most love. Because you're one thing, and you're a mind. And what you believe you achieve. And if you believe in anger and hate and all these things, and you believe there's going to be a civil war, you're going to have a civil war. I'm not going to have a civil war because I don't believe in any of that shit. So, maybe I'll even hear about a civil war that took place in America, but it won't involve me. But it'll involve you if you want to manifest that and you want that to be your reality. So, we have to think of ourselves as the polarized being that we're trying to bring into balance. Oftentimes I will meditate on a visualization that I think can be very powerful on a very long corridor stretching out in front of me. And it's kind of like I see like space behind it. It reminds me of a video game. I forget what video game it was, but like there's like sort of like a marker that just sort of like goes out and like sort of like the distance, sort of measuring the distance before you. And there's all this like space on the side of it. And I visualize that, and I'll visualize myself moving myself energetically down the center of the corridor instead of bouncing off the wall and being upset and being sad. Like sometimes I'll be going through something and I'll see that I'm like in a loop about it because the thing hasn't changed, and I'm just sort of like banging my head up against the wall. And I'll try to take that energy and I'm like taking that energy and I'm just sending it up this central path. Like, no need to bounce off the wall a billion times to get down to where it eventually wants to take me. Let's not hit the walls, and let's just go forward into this balanced path ahead. And I've had some really powerful meditations doing that, and I've felt myself, feel a lot better about, energy. Tapping into energy, feelings, the way things feel. It's a very important skill that you can pick up, as time goes on, as you start to look into things like this or have experiences with psychicism or channeling or any of these things, like you might have heard me talk about me having in my introductory episode that I did before. But polarity is a real thing. And if you don't recognize its existence in your reality and recognize its existence in you, you are doomed to be kicked around by it. It's time to get a hold of this mind and accept your oneness with all things and start trying to figure out how to love and forgive everything and move on with your life. Anyway, I'm Jesse Blaze Snider. I am doing a cool Sunday night live stream with my best buddy, Aaron Sparrow. It's on YouTube only. It's called Coolest Geeks Alive Stream. Some of you guys listen to my Coolest Geek Alive podcast, which is a geek culture podcast that I do every Saturday and every Wednesday. But now I do a Sunday night thing with Aaron Sparrow, which you can tune into. It's around 7 or 8 Pacific, and 7 or 8 Eastern, 11 or 12 Pacific. We went a little late last time we went. It started at midnight, but we've been generally starting at 8 and 11. But come on down if you like geek culture stuff, or if you just want to talk with me and interact with me. You can also email me. I'm Jesse Blaze at jessesnider.com, and I am Coolest Geek JBS on Twitter and on Instagram. I love you guys for listening to this show. This is just starting out. If you'd like if you like the show, please support it. Drop a comment and share it with your friends and do all that other stuff. And also check out my cool geek culture show or the live stream that we do on Sundays. Also, I do an awesome music show called All Your Favorite Bands Suck, which is a feature on great bands every Monday night, and just tons of great bands. There's like 26 so far that we've done, and that show's getting really popular. My shows, like last month, the 2 shows together, we were over 1 million downloads for all our shows, so they're gaining a lot of popularity. So it's really cool. Thank you to all of our listeners. Thank you to anybody who's listening, because they listen to those things. And the last thing I will share with you is I have a really awesome, subversive, cool comic book called Fucking for Our Future. It's about to launch on Kickstarter. It's a titty book that's being sold on nudity, but it's, like I said, very subversive and funny, and I think anybody would like it. It's for any adult audience, but any audience. It's very interesting and intellectual and fun. If you're a spiritual person who wants to support spiritual people like you doing good things, I believe this is some good spiritual work, despite appearances. Anyway, check out Fucking for Our Future. You can check it out at www.bldsts.com. That's Blacklight District Studios. That's our website, bldsts.com. And you can see like a whole preview for it. You can sign up for notifications to be one of the people who might be able to get the early boob special. There's only 69 people who are going to get on the early boob special, so do that. Anyway, I've been enjoying doing this show. I've been like terrified a little bit of it. I take it as such a big responsibility. I've been told to kind of slow down and beat a dead horse a little bit and talk about these things at great length. So forgive me for those people out there who are a little bit more adept at things and wished I was going a little bit faster talking about various concepts. But for those of you who are appreciating this process, I'm so glad to have you here. Thank you so much for listening.
Anyway, I hope you will tune in to the show next week when I will be moving down the list. I don't know what's technically next on the universal laws list off the top of my head. Maybe I can see something on my thing right here. Oh, I've got like a picture from when I did the universal laws bit. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, and he did. There it is. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, next week. This is me talking on the other thing. Next week we go about the transmutation of energy. Yeah. It's about the transformation of energy. It's the law of I'm so wiped this week and I wasn't prepared to talk about next week's show. So there's a lot of different ways to talk about that law, and like it's the way that like I was saying it, and like whatever. We'll get into it next week. Guys, forgive me. I just like it's like there's so much like pressure like on all my shows, like everything that I do, because like ultimately I'm a really knowledgeable person. I'm trying to pass my knowledge on, and I believe in like self-confidence and like talking like bravely and confidently, but you often just like you set yourself up for so much ridicule when it's like, oh, how smart is he? I'm like, oh, I was tired and I was doing that and I did 3 podcasts that day. It's like, can't fucking defend yourself. It's really funny. You're really like out in the open when you do these podcasts. I see so many people kind of getting lambasted over time who are like really popular podcasters, but over time people have been able to kind of scrutinize a couple shortcomings that they have or whatever, and all of a sudden there's like this narrative that they're bad people. It's funny, and I've always had difficulties with groups and people not necessarily being nice to me and misunderstanding me. So it like makes you nervous. But got to be bold and happy and positive and all these things, because it's all just a mind, and it is it is your destiny to be you, be who you are. Shine brightly, my people, and make the mistakes you're going to make, and do the things you're going to do. Anyway, I love you guys so much. Thank you for hanging out with me. I really appreciate you so much being a part of my podcasting world and a part of my life in this way. Like I said, I have a lot of other podcasts and ways in which I interact with the world, like my band Dilf USA and comic books that I make. So check me out, Jesse Blaze Snider. I am in the world, and I appreciate your support in all arenas as one spiritual person to another. I hope that this episode has helped you in some way, and I look forward to talking to you next time on another fucking amazing secret breaking episode of everything they don't want you to know. That's right.